Hello, beautiful souls. This is Ashley Pitzer, your host with Practicing Life Podcast. All right. Have you ever run across someone who apologizes obsessively? Now, people use apologies differently. This is something that I've come to learn later in my life, and we're going to talk about that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't apologize. I'm not telling you what to do. My job is to educate, inform, empower you to make the best decision for you. That's it. But I've realized that people use apologies differently. Now, 2 to 3 years ago, maybe longer, because that pandemic like caused me to lose 2 years of my life and I just don't recall it at all. But there was a point in my life when I had been introduced to somebody to help train them because I was a personal trainer for a decade and I helped people lose weight. But on top of that, and what I really love to do is help people to accomplish something with their fitness goals. And so as a triathlete, I was helping train some people on competing for triathlons. And as a college swimmer, swimming is definitely my forte. And a lot of people, that's their weakness as a side topic on a general rule of thumb. Swimming is the part that most people are less trained on. And especially when you're in open waters. So I got a lot of people who wanted help for the swimming proportion and feeling comfortable swimming in open waters. By the way, another little tangent side note, it's vicious out there in the open waters when they have a mass start and people are swimming on top of each other. And so there's obviously a lot of fears that go on to swimming in open waters when you're not a strong swimmer and you've got people that are just thrashing in the water because they're not a good swimmer. And then you got the people that are aggressively trying to outpace you and to win. And then you have the factor that there's a lot of people that have like heart conditions and they may have like a heart attack in the water. And this is one of the reasons why there are so many lifeguards available for open swims, because not only do you have the drowning threat, but with the adrenaline and the fear going on, if you have heart issues, heart attacks literally can happen. Even if you are a super athletic person and you're in great condition, it happens. Anyway, going back to my story. So I had a person who wanted help with swimming open waters triathlons. And, this particular person apologized so many times, like so many times, like within every minute, apology, 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 apology. And this person by far apologized so much. And I'm a very patient, compassionate person. As an empathetic person, I use apologies probably different, or at least I did use them differently in my past than I do now. And at that point, I was more of an apologetic person. So apologies never had bothered me before, but this person was so compulsive with their apologies that it actually became annoying to me. So have you ever experienced that? Have you met somebody? Are you that person right now? Now, I helped this person for a number of months and I helped them get to a stronger point to be able to compete. And the apologies never stopped. Now, if you know me, I'm not the type of person that you generally like. I don't need apologies. Some people need apologies, right? And so, that justification did not exist for me. I'm a very loving, open person. I don't get upset or angry very often. It's so far few in between. So, it was something that really, really stood out to me. And of course, my life has dramatically changed in the course of, a couple of years where I really realized that my marriage wasn't as healthy and lovely as I thought it was. And lots of work has been done. I'm now a coach. I'm now on the other side of things. I've gotten coached a lot. I was a person who probably apologized a lot, maybe not as obsessively or compulsively as this example, but I definitely was a person who apologized a lot. So in this instance with this person I was helping, they were apologizing because they have been in nonstop, super life-threatening, abusive relationships. I mean, the type of relationships where they were in and out of the hospital on a frequent basis and their life was like hanging on by mere threads and getting pulled back. And then they would still go back to that person and it would happen again and again and again, right? So their apologies was a self-preservation technique to feel safe, right? So let's back up a moment, because how obsessively you apologize. I mean, it's hard to put that in a scale and to know where you fall in it. Do you apologize too much? Do you apologize the right amount, right? I'm not here to judge that. I'm just here to tell you, if you realize that you apologize a lot, let's talk about that. And then let's talk about the fact that often people who have experienced abuse on some level, whether that's mentally, emotionally, or physically, they do have a tendency to apologize a lot. So, apologies. Apologies mean something different to a lot of people. And that's something that I really didn't realize until I kind of educated myself on it. So you have the type of apology you probably are all familiar with as a child, where, and I did this as a parent too, where you're like, this isn't proper etiquette. You need to go apologize. So your parent, you would go to your child and be like, hey, you ripped this toy out of somebody's hand. This isn't appropriate behavior. You need to go apologize, right? So you have this training from an early childhood of when to apologize and for what reasons. And you've probably had a child or watched a child who did not feel sorry in the least bit, but were being forced to be saying these words, or they would get a punishment, they would get a timeout, they would lose their toy, whatever it is. And so they were taught to apologize even when they did not feel sorry. So that's kind of a lot of beginning stages for people growing up. Maybe you had different experiences, but now that you're an adult, there can be apologies for different reasons. Empaths are notorious for saying sorry as a way of connecting and relating to another person. They are saying sorry often to acknowledge what another person is experiencing or going through. So their sorry doesn't mean a sorry as I'm making amends for something that I caused you. Their sorry is like, hey, I see you. I'm aware of what you're going through. Then you have a sorry with someone that's maybe like taking advantage of you, using you, whatever it may be. But you can have a sorry that literally is empty, unnecessary words, and it means like nothing. It's not I'm connecting to you. It's not that I'm seeing you. It is an obligatory like feeling of I have to say sorry so that it gets me X, Y, and Z. There was a study done, and I can't really remember what this was, whether it was a Washington Journal or whatever it may be, but there was a study done where a person had walked up and like asked to borrow something, and this gentleman was getting no to everything. But if he said, I'm sorry first, and then asked, people would give them what they want. Now, if you are in a unhealthy relationship, or you possibly think that you may be in a relationship with somebody that is narcissistic, you will find that people who have narcissistic traits, if you're not familiar with that word, it really just means that someone is very self-involved. Everything that they are doing is for themselves. And they lack responsibility, and everything is someone else's fault. They get all the praise, they take no responsibility, and there's a lot of manipulation in their behaviors. And they truly only care about themselves. So that's a rundown version of what a narcissist is. So they will use I'm sorry as a form of manipulation to either get them what they want or to get out of something. But they absolutely are not changing their behavior. So their sorry is worthless. It means nothing. It is just a manipulation tool for them. So you have sorry for empaths to connect, to acknowledge. You have sorries for narcissists to just get what they want or to avoid getting in trouble. Then you have the I'm sorry to make amends because maybe your behavior, did cause something. And then you have the sorries for self-preservation to feel safe. let's talk about that one. So, you know, I would say that from my personal past experience, I I am an empath, so I used sorry often to connect. A go-to, for example, was, "Oh, I'm sorry you lost your dog," right? Um, "I'm sorry you're having a bad day." But then I also was using sorry as like a self-preservation. I was using sorry as in, I'm like, I'm asking too many questions. I'm taking up too much space. Like I was using, I'm sorry for I feel wrong. I feel bad. Like I was just using it all the time. Now, I was a child who grew up in an abusive home. My father was definitely had violent rages, not all the time, but he did have them. Right. And so a a lot of times when you see someone who's apologizing excessively, it is a sign that they have been conditioned in their childhood to be responsible for other people's emotions. And it's a sign, again, it's a self-preservation thing. It's as in your childhood, if you are one of those people that excessively apologize, in your childhood, you learn to be vigilant. And vigilant, I mean like observing, looking around, being aware, even if you're no longer conscious of it because you've been doing it so long, it's now subconscious and it's just automatic. So you are on alert, like 24/7. Any of your waking moment, you are vigilant. You are on alert and you are looking for danger, whether you are aware of it or not. And so you have taught yourself to be on alert for potential dangers. And you have this belief system because you have been trained in your childhood from abuse of some manner, emotionally, mentally, physically, that your behaviors affect somebody. I did not get this, e- even with being coached for 2 to 3 years. It's only like really recently. I mean, I've done a lot of transitions. I've grown a lot, people. So, there's layers to healing, and they need to happen in a unique way for you. So my layers of unpeeling and unrevealing stuff are happening in the way that I need them to happen to be able to protect myself and feel safe. So however you are experiencing your healing journey, wherever you are, it is unique to you. So within my like own healing journey, I am only now, with all the work that I have done, just realizing that I was really saying sorry to, not only to feel safe, but because I had so much fear around harming other people. I don't know, it was probably my fourth life coach that I had. And I worked with different types of life coaches as I've progressed in my healing. And nobody, by the way, none of my life coaches noticed this or brought this to my attention or focused on this at all. But I can remember on my fourth, life coach having multiple sessions where I was like, my number one fear is that I am harming somebody. And I don't know if I'm harming somebody. And I'm just like preemptively deciding that I am harming somebody. And it was paralyzing for me from an emotional, mental standpoint, not from a physical. But I really did not want to become a coach. I did not want to help people because I was so afraid that like my helping them could actually harm them. I was terrified of it. I was terrified to start this podcast because I'm like, what if I misspeak? I misspeak, people. When I write these podcasts, when I do these podcasts, I just come on here as myself. I may mess up. I may, twist my words. I may not say things elegantly, whatever it may be, right? I was having so much fear about, well, what if I cause harm to another person? Now, this wasn't the first time I've had this feeling. Like this was a childhood pattern that has carried through my adulthood, where I was always in fear of causing harm to another person. And from a spiritual standpoint, and I used to be in a religion, and I'm not in a religion anymore, but I still very much am a spiritual person. I'm just more esoteric. I have different viewpoints now, like everything is energy, right? As above, as so below. So below as above. Like there are different types of maybe words that I use, but even in my current practice, one of the things that is like your moral principle is that you never want to cause another person harm. And so like that was one of my multiple coaching sessions was like, oh my gosh, like I could be causing harm to somebody. And my coach constantly brought me back to, if your intention is to do good, then that's all that matters. And it didn't matter how many times she told me that. It was never enough of an assurance for me. I was still in that mindset of being responsible for another person's emotions, being responsible for another person's reactions. I hadn't transformed to the person I am today, right? Okay, so hopefully I didn't go off too much of content, but sometimes when I explain needs, not because, I want you to all know my personal life and my personal thoughts, it's hopefully that my personal examples can help you see something in your own life or be relatable or help you in some manner. That is purely the reason that I have this podcast, right? So when someone is saying, I'm sorry, and again, how much you're saying sorry can vary. You could say sorry a lot and not be in a way of feeling safe. Like everybody uses sorry differently. So please keep that in mind. But if you are sitting with yourself and your emotions and you realize that you're saying sorry to avoid a conflict, to fill the silence, because you feel obligated to, because if you don't do it, you could get harmed in some way. If you are saying sorry because you're unsure of yourself, if you feel like you're wasting somebody's time, if you're saying sorry because you didn't remember every single detail and that could have caused somebody else to have issues, like then those are the things to really set with and to pay attention to this, episode. Because I'm speaking to you and I'm here to help you and I want to help you. I will clarify though that from a liability legal standpoint, if you are in an abusive relationship, if you need help with traumatic experiences, that life coaching is not a substitute for medical care. And medical care also includes going to a counselor, a psychologist, whatever it may be. I can help you with understanding yourself better, with self-love, with empowering yourself. These are things that I can help with. But from a legal standpoint, I must make you aware of the fact, and I really want to honor the fact that there are people who specialize in trauma and they go to school for years and years for it. I have personally been there. I have walked that path. None of those things actually worked for me. Life coaches did help me so much more than going the Western medical path. They did not help me, though they are trained and qualified and they've gone to school. It's just me. It's just me. It's my preferences that didn't work out, right? So, but I want to really make it clear those two distinctions. Okay, so if you are saying I'm sorry in order to feel safe, then I just want to talk to you because I understand you. I was there, and even with all my healing journey, that still exists in my body and my brain and everything like that. And I want to talk to you because I'm also a hypnotist. So I help people life coaching, but a lot of it is intertwined with hypnosis. Hypnosis is like the best kept secret ever. But anyway, when you are saying I'm sorry, even if you are saying I'm sorry to connect with someone, you are also training your brain, even on a minuscule amount, even if it's so minute and small, you are training your brain that you are sorry for somebody. Like feelings can come up in your body that relate to guilt or worry or fear or whatever, right? And so you are training your brain, even if it's very minutely, that you are somewhat responsible for another person's emotions. So my personal practice, and you don't have to follow it, this is just what works for me, as I have gone through my own personal journey, I am very particular about when I say sorry. Now, I came from a past where I said sorry all the time. In fact, my husband and I are building a house, and I feel like I've had many past lives. Before I had kids, my job used to be to review contracts, and I worked closely with legal. And so, whether it was rewriting insurance policies or looking at any type of contract and finding loopholes and like making sure that those were fleshed out and, to our advantage for the company I worked for, right? So, in my past life, I was working with a lot of contracts, a lot of details. And so I still carry that. It's important to read a contract and everything. And I read through the construction contract, and I probably had 15 questions. And so when we sat down to sign this contract, I went through my 15 questions, but I could still have both experiences in that moment. I could have the experience of, this is important. I need this information. I'm going to ask these questions. You are going to sit here and, answer them, or I potentially will not be signing this contract, right? But I could also feel, oh my gosh, I'm asking too many questions. Ooh, I'm taking up too much time. Ooh, is everyone here bored besides me? Like, I can still have those feelings because both of those brain patterns exist in my brain. Both of those pathways exist in my brain. It's not like one disappears, one gets less used, and therefore, like a well-traveled hiking path, if you don't use it over time, grass can grow, trees can grow, whatever, and it can be less appealing to your brain, right? So that pathway is less appealing to my brain, but it still exists. And I can kind of turn my head and be like, oh my gosh, that pathway still exists, right? And so that is like my version of, oh my gosh, am I making, everybody here bored? Like, same way as turning and seeing, that pathway still exists. I am now empowered and can choose to be like, drawing my attention over to here because I am willing to advocate for myself. And these questions are worth everybody's time. And I just want you to know both of those feelings can still exist to me. It's just what I give credence to. What do I give value to? What do I give my attention to? That's really the distinguishing factor. And as a hypnotist and a coach, I can help you with those things. But all right. So my personal preference is to really use my apologies with intention now. I went from a past of apologizing for everything. And I'm going to tell you, if you are somebody who says, I'm so sorry, all the time, and you don't like the way it feels, it doesn't feel aligned, it feels icky, or whatever it may be for you, and you want to stop saying, I'm sorry, this is some of the things that I would suggest to you to practice. Now, there's more than one ways to do this. If you're not looking to go into counseling or to seek a trauma therapist or something like that, and you're just looking for your, like, what did you do, Ashley? Let me tell you what I did and what I would suggest to you. For me, I would tell you to stop saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry for the same thing. So apologizing once, that's a really good place to start off. So instead of saying like, I'm sorry 15 times, like I remember I was in college, I was in a business class and we had to do mock interviews. And for these mock interviews, the teacher had problems intentionally given so that you could practice them. And so when it was my turn, the problem that I had was I showed up 15 minutes late to my interview. And so then you jump into your scenario, right? So you have somebody who's practicing pretending to be the interviewer, and then I am pretending to be the person getting interviewed. And I know that I'm 15 minutes late. I can, and the scenario was I show up and we say hi, and now we're in an elevator that is going really slow. And so anyway, in my little mock trial, it was 20 years ago. I can remember apologizing so many times in that elevator. I didn't know what else to say. I didn't know what else to do. I was fixated on apologizing. And I was completely unaware of it. And my teacher at the end of the little scenario was like, okay, stop apologizing. Say it one time, right? Like, I've gotten this advice before in my life, and it just went, oh, that's good. Yeah, I get it. But I wasn't able to make that a habit. And so I'm telling you now, one of the things that I did do to change saying I'm sorry frequently was to control my tongue, my mouth, my thoughts, to say it one time and to set with the disease, the uneasiness, the discomfort of only saying it once. And that was a big deal for me. I'm telling you, that's personally what I experienced. It did not feel comfortable just to say I'm sorry once. So that's where I started off. And that also helped me to do what I would say is like step 2, creating the awareness, because now it became super apparent to me how often I was apologizing. I thought I was apologizing already more than I liked because I had that icky feeling associated with it. But now when you're sitting with the uncomfortable, I'm only going to say apology once, then you become aware of how much you're apologizing, right? So one, if you can, limit yourself to one apology, whatever it may be on, even if you're still using it as an unnecessary apology, like, oh, I'm sorry you had to take your dog to the vet today. Like, even if you're using it in that manner. So, and then you're going to build up with that, becoming aware of how often you are saying it, and you're going to build up to a point where you're saying thank you instead of apologizing. So if I was going to reverse time and back to that college example, I would hope that the person I am today would probably not even apologize. Oh, does that startle you? Oh my gosh. I probably would not even apologize, because my step 3 in this whole process is learning to say thank you instead. So I would have probably come in, shaked that person's hand and said, thank you so much for being patient with me and being willing to wait the extra 15 minutes. I had no idea that a mattress was going to blow off of somebody's back of the truck. I could have made that story up, whatever. I had no idea that I was going to run into this type of traffic, whatever it may be. And I really appreciate that you're willing still to come through with this interview. You won't be sorry. I am an excellent candidate, and I really value being on time, right? I would have changed the scope of my words and my focus, right? I would have given them credence and honored them in their time, right? And let them know how much I care that they were willing to wait. Now, I also now do this with things, because I used to apologize all the time for, I'm sorry your dog's sick. I'm sorry your pet died. I'm sorry, that you're having a bad day, right? I've now changed all of these things to thank yous. And I know that sounds really, really, weird. And even if I can't say thank you, because I'm not going to say, well, thank you that your pet died, right? But I'll change it to something like, I'm so grateful, to know that you love your pet so much, and I'm here for you if you want to talk. So I'm not apologizing anymore. I will say, like, when someone's, aunt passed away, I'll be like, your aunt sounds like an amazing person. I'm so grateful that you had this special time with them and they mean so much to you. If you want to share some memories with me, I would love to hear them, because I really care about you. Right. So I'm no longer apologizing. And I also now understand the way my subconscious brain works. And I also understand the implications of taking responsibility for somebody else's emotions. And I'm no longer willing to do that anymore. So this is one of the reasons that I am very limited in my apologies. So, when my kid has a bad day at school, I can just acknowledge that he had a bad day at school. Like, oh, I'm hearing what you're saying, that you had a really bad day. That must be really tough for you. Is there anything that I can do that will help, make your day better? Not apologizing. I'm still connecting with my child. So, all right, just to kind of recircle around, apologizing once, building up that awareness of how often you're apologizing, creating that confidence in the things that you need in order to move it to a thank you, and then learning to apologize only for when you need to make an amends for something. This is what I did. This is, how I worked. Now I want to talk to you because as much as we use like empaths use I'm sorry to connect, and I've already told you what happens in your brain. I also want you to think about what happens to people externally that are viewing you, because research has shown people that apologize a lot are often viewed as less assertive, less confident, lower self-esteem. Some articles have been written about how apologizing too much is creates a loss of respect for you. And so these are all things to consider. Like, I know how I used to use I'm sorry to connect to people. But are you truly connecting with somebody when they're losing like respect for you because you're apologizing all the time? So that's just a thought out there. You do with it what you want to do with it. Again, I'm not here to judge you or to control you or to say what's best for you. This is what I did. I would throw in there that I now do, of course, hypnosis on myself for self-love. I mean, self-love is the foundation for everything. So I really work with my clients and with me on feeling safe in my body, feeling safe and giving myself the love that I need. And that was also part of my journey, even though I've given you these steps. I'm doing a personalized hypnosis to work on whatever issues it is to help you feel love for yourself is a really great place to go to. And of course, you always have your route of going to a trauma specialist, a counselor, somebody who specializes in OCD behavior, because excessive I'm sorries are an OCD behavior as well. So I hope this article helped you so much. I hope you like next week's episode, because I will be reading you chapter 1 from A Marked Heart, which is a teen fantasy. That's pretty much written for adults, and exercise in there, I'll tell you that. But it is also a very philosophy and helping you kind of understand why people do the things that they do. So sending you so much love. Have a good one.